Welcome back to In-Game Live Game Day, hour number 3 right here on SportsGrid. Brady Kannon and Tom Vecchio with you. We've got you for a couple more hours on SiriusXM Channel 159, all the TV streaming online, however you are joining us this evening. We appreciate it. We've been talking a lot of college hoops, a lot of Four Nations face-off hockey. Of course, the USA leading Canada 2-1 right now. Just about 30 seconds left in the second period up there in Montreal. Team USA almost a $4 favorite now on the money line. In fact, they just moved to $4, minus 400 on the money line. If you think Canada can come back and win this game, plus 285, a pretty juicy price right there. And the in-game total still at 5.5. But now we want to shift our attention to college baseball. Just such a growing sport here in the last handful of years. I've really fallen in love with it. Both of my kids going to college, I started paying attention to the college baseball, went to the College World Series last year, saw Tennessee get it done. So we bring in our man, Matt Grissom. Grissom on X is where you can find him on Twitter, part of the NCAA Insiders. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. And this has it's opening day. This is a big part of your life. It's like opening day, opening week in the NFL, Major League Baseball, what have you. Of course, college baseball got underway on Friday, Valentine's Day, and we're rolling into a weekend here. I imagine your eyes been glued to all these games for 2 days straight.
I have. Yeah, it's the best time of the year. And I try not to overreact, but, when you preached all off season that, oh, this team's going to be so much better at pitching or this team's going to be better at hitting, and then they go out and put up 3 runs in 9 innings, you feel like an idiot. But you have to pump the brakes and remember it's a long season. So try not to overreact too much.
So if we get started off, new season, obviously a lot of people are going to be wanting to dig into game by game. But if we go from a high level, what teams are you most interested in from a future perspective? Are you buying into because of some of these offseason changes?
So one of the teams that I really liked was Virginia, and credit to D1 baseball because they can move markets. We don't really have an AP top 25 in college baseball. So you have basically 5 different groups that put out a top 25. Virginia was 23-1 back in November, and then D1 baseball ranked them preseason number 2. Their odds were cut in half. I think they're still about 12-1 right now, but I think Brian O'Connor, you look at this Virginia Cavaliers team, they're a team that basically live in Omaha come June. So I think when he comes out and says preseason that this is the most talented team he's ever coached, and this is a guy that's already won 1 College World Series, and he goes back every 2 out of 3 years. So I think they get back, and I think they run the ACC.
Well, right now they are leading Villanova 3-1 in that ball game. Virginia lost its opener on Friday in extra innings, a walk-off job by the Wolverines of Michigan. And I'm with you. I'm on Virginia. You have a better number than me. I got them at 10-1 to win it all. But I wonder what your thoughts are on some other teams here. And I want to dive into the SEC, Matt. We were talking earlier about how good the SEC is in basketball. And I believe, I talk to a lot of people like yourself that really know the college baseball sport and the handicap, and they figure if you don't have a few SEC futures in your pocket, you're missing the boat.
Yeah, SEC has pretty much owned Omaha. We saw Tennessee, Texas A&M square off against each other last year, and then we saw Florida and LSU the year before that. So I think it's obviously going to be a very SEC overwhelming presence there in Omaha come June, but it's all chalk. You look at a team like Arkansas, who seems to always be in the preseason top 10. They're still 15-1. That's really about as far out as you want to get. But there's Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, all 10-1 or less right now. You pretty much roll the dice and see. Injuries are going to play a big part in this. You lose a big pitcher like Texas A&M's got Ryan Prager, who managed to stay healthy all season long. That was a big key thing for them. But then you've seen other teams struggle when one pitcher goes down. You think the SEC pitching depth is that good, but when you've got so much emphasis on winning week in and week out in the SEC. It really takes a deep staff.
So as Brady was saying, like college baseball becoming more and more popular over the past few years, are there a few players like must-see television? Because Paul Skeens obviously was, fantastic. Is there players that you would want to, have the average fan that hasn't been involved in college baseball betting to get involved with, get to know as the year goes on? It's like, hey, this is a player that you're going to want to focus in on.
Yeah, I think the best way to start is look at the odds for Golden Spikes. So right now you've got Texas's Max Bellew playing right now. They're up 7-0 last time I checked against Ole Miss. They're in Arlington, but you've got Cam Canarella, who plays for Clemson in the outfield. He made some really good plays today in their big blowout win. They came back and won last night against Oklahoma State, who's got another big bat in their lineup, Nolan Schubart. I had a 21 ticket on him to win the Golden Spikes. So there's a ton of talent. There's no real Paul Skeens outside of maybe Florida State pitcher Jamie Arnold. He's just absolute nails on the mound. But I expect there to be some other names pop up throughout the season. We had Louisville's pitcher last night. He absolutely went off. I think he had 10 strikeouts. So it's kind of any given Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I'm not going to be surprised if somebody just pitches really, really well or some bat comes alive that we didn't see. Kind of like Charlie Condon last year. He was on our watch list, but a buddy of mine had to reach out to Bet Rivers to see if they would give him a number on Condon to win the Golden Spikes. And I think they hung it at 50-1. And lo and behold, Condon was the one holding the trophy at the end of the year there for Georgia.
Not a bad bet at all. Matt, I want to know, in your experience, you've obviously been, involved in this heavily. We don't know a lot of people nationwide that specialize in college baseball handicapping, but it feels like, and I know this because I specialize in golf handicapping, and I've seen the growth of golf betting really explode over the last 10 years or so. There's so many different ways you can bet it, and then you had COVID, and the only thing that was going on was UFC and golf, and that was kind of another big surge in golf betting. How have you seen the growth of college baseball betting in your experience, and do you feel it is one of the sports that's growing more so than any others in betting spaces?
Yeah, I mean, not just from the entertainment standpoint, but the fact that more sports books are offering lines, I think that's what's going to, at the end of the day, that's what people are going to be interested in, because if they put their money into it, of course they're going to watch a game. They may pay $19.99 for Flow Sports to watch baseball over this weekend, which is an absolute ripoff. Don't forget to go unsubscribe to it or they'll keep billing you. But I just availability of lines is really one of the biggest things that's going to grow the sport. But if you're just a generic MLB baseball fan, just watch the college game. It is so much fun. They've got these aluminum bats, and the runs will get out of hand, and the bullpens are equally terrible. There's no better sport, in my opinion. And the sports books, they get it wrong. Like, it's a very beatable sport. Yesterday, or no, I'm thinking Thursday night, they started hanging lines, and Clemson, I think, opened up over Oklahoma State. They were both minus 110, 115. And a ton of money started coming in on Clemson. I think it got all the way up to about minus 150. Arkansas, the run line was 1.5 last night after they narrowly escaped game Washington State. I think it was 3-2. And then they blow out their doubleheader in a run rule. And then they hang 1.5 last night. It closed 4.5. Arkansas won 5-2. So beating look on the number is critical, as it is in any sport, but very much so in college.
Yeah, and Clemson, a big win over Arizona earlier today as well. Back with more with Matt when we return.
At some point, these 80s are to learn, we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience, who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work. in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Brady Kannon and Tom Vecchio here with you on In-Game Live Game Day, continuing with Matt Grissom. Again, follow him on Twitter at Grissom on X. He is a betting analyst for the NCAA Insiders and certainly a college baseball specialist. We'll pick your brain on some of the matchups, the key matchups for Sunday, Matt. I know the lines aren't out yet, but we'll get some of your initial opinions. But I also want to ask you, as far as the futures, we are still very young in the season, only a couple days old, and we aren't even through day 2 just yet. Many games still in action as we speak. And as a part of your advice, and Lou Finicaro, another common guest here on SportsGrid, another guy that's very good in college baseball, Ben Wilson, a friend of ours that's also, very good at college baseball. I picked the brains. I was handicapping the handicappers. I spoke with all 3 of you guys, and I landed on Virginia and LSU, Arkansas, Florida, and North Carolina. So 3 SEC teams and 2 ACC teams. What do you think of my card? And I know Tom's not involved yet. We got to get him into the party here, and the audience, of course, as well. What is your advice at this point on maybe a handful of futures you'd invest in for the college baseball season?
Well, my card looks very similar to yours then, so I guess we're running in the right circles. I also have a road number on Texas A&M, 11-1, that opened up in November. I don't think they'll get back. It's almost like the team that's too good isn't going to make it. Like Wake Forest last year was the shortest shot to make it. They didn't even sniff Omaha. So I like that. I also like a little bit longer shots. Georgia, I think, is going to be really good despite losing Charlie Condon. I think Wes Johnson, what he's building in that pitching staff, is going to be more serviceable for the Bulldogs, which is really what they were lacking last year. They really had to get into shootouts with people just to win, but they still made it to a super regional. And then Clemson, we saw Eric Bakich. He took over after making that run with Michigan before losing to Vanderbilt in the College World Series championship final. But Clemson's really got all the tools necessary to compete in the ACC and make a push for Omaha. They were real close last year. They've got a true ace in Aiden Canuck, who unfortunately didn't have his best outing. Kind of got blown up there in the 4th inning. But I think Clemson, you showed their grit last night, and then they come out and they really swing the bat well today. So I think Clemson and Georgia, I think they're in the ballpark of 30-1, 35-1. That's worth getting a ticket on too.
So as someone, myself that's getting more and more involved in this, for basketball and football, where we're so worried about like injury reports, is this player going to play, whatever it might be, what would you say for someone getting involved? Like, what are the pitfalls or like the key points you need to be worried about week in and week out when it comes to handicap? Because you said the lines moved dramatically on Thursday night, jumping on those things. Like, what are the key points someone needs to worry about?
I would say pitching rotation. A lot of teams, they will not announce who their starting rotation is. Granted, they did get better last season. They started to do it actually as early as Tuesday, if I remember, for this weekend. So the more information out there, and that's one of the tools that we have at collegebaseballinsiders.com. We go through a Google sheet, and every time we see a pitching announcement for whatever team is playing, we go in and fill it out. So our goal is by the time first pitch is thrown on Friday morning or whenever that first game starts, we have all of the starting rotations in our website for that game.
Matt, can you expand upon that a little bit? We have an audience out there maybe just getting introduced to betting on college baseball and taking an interest in this sport from a fan and a better perspective. How do they get your information? Where can they find you? Where can they do their research and find the information, the content that you're putting out there?
Absolutely. It's all at collegebaseballinsiders.com. We have everything from advanced statistics, XFIP, Sierra, to weighted runs created plus for the team. We really dove into that heavily last season. I got hooked up with an awesome website designer and statistician there, Nick Demmett. He's done a fantastic job building this tool for us to use. Every night we scrape the data from NCAA stats. So as of right now, we're still only just 1 or 2 games in for most of these clubs. So as we continue to get more stats compiled, then our projections will be a little bit more accurate. We're still going off some of last season's stats, some of the transfer portal, stuff like that. But you can definitely look at the starting rotations, the weather, everything is incorporated into our projections, which hit at about 58% last year. We're looking to improve that here this year.
So will you offer the advice like on a team that has a high WRC plus, which is something that I rely like very heavily on when it comes to MLB betting? Will you use that in terms of like a game over or a team total over? Because finding those inefficiencies in the market, as you said, it's a newer sport, it's growing. The sportsbooks don't have everything figured out. Is that the spot to go?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've been really successful. I've been using analytics and sabermetrics of baseball for the last 3 years to handicap sports. And I've done better than just kind of the before going off of pitchers' ERA and OPS. I mean, that was really all that was out there until we started building this thing out. So I think it's a great tool, especially when you compare it with teams who may pitch off their normal ace. We saw it last year with Hagen Smith. Like when Arkansas trotted out a guy that you were probably going to lose to on Friday night, why throw your best arm? Try to get that win Saturday and then get weird on Sunday, maybe have a bullpen day and get that win. So, and get the series win. So I think when you pay attention to the advanced stats in conjunction with a starting rotation and making sure that you know who is going to start, definitely you could see some overs and unders being played out of that.
We've got Matt around for one more segment. We'll pick his brain on some of the matchups coming up on Sunday on the College Baseball Diamonds. Update you a little bit on the scoreboard here in the Four Nations face-off, Team USA and Team Canada. It is still 2-1 in favor of the United States. They are at a break right now, coming back for the third period coming up shortly. On the college hardwood, Texas is now pulled out in front of Kentucky, 76-70. Florida way out in front and covering the number against South Carolina, 88-67. BYU all over K-State, 50-31. 14 and a half minutes left in the second half up there in Provo. More with Matt Grissom talking college baseball. Stick around.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience, who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Gonzaga leading Pepperdine 31-11. The Zags were 25.5-point favorites in that one. Utah out in front of Kansas early. Kansas a road favorite at Salt Lake, 16-8 early in the first half there. And Washington State up on St. Mary's in Moraga, 15-13 with 13 minutes left to go in the first half in that one. Continuing the college baseball talk with Matt Grissom here, the NCAA Insiders. Check out his website at collegebaseballinsiders.com for all of the stats and information. Want to dive into a few contests that are set to go on Sunday. I believe you said the lines are not out yet, so it's kind of hard to give an opinion when you don't have a price, but maybe if you can kind of fake it a little bit with us here, Matt, and give us which way you might be leaning, and maybe you can even play odds maker for a second and guess what you might make the price. Louisville and Arizona. Arizona has traditionally been a very good baseball team, college baseball team. We saw them get clubbed by Clemson on Friday. I believe they got a win earlier today, and Louisville's come out pretty darn good as well early on in the season. This looks like a pretty good matchup here.
Yeah, Louisville getting a big win last night after the comeback against Texas. And then Arizona starts 0-2 after losing to Ole Miss last night 2-1 and then got the brakes beat off today. But Arizona was preseason number 2, shortest shot to win the Big 12. This is a big climb, though, for them. The Big 12 is down this season, but a lot of hype coming in around the Wildcats. I think this is probably going to be more of a minus 115 both ways. If you get a dog, I would take the dog like plus 120, 125, but I feel like this is going to be 2 evenly matched teams. Louisville, probably the better team at the end of the day, but just kind of all depends on that number. If it's minus 115, I'll probably be on Louisville.
Also, a big matchup between Ole Miss and Clemson, although it's not at Ole Miss, at least as I'm saying, it's going to be in Arlington. So does the handicap change slightly? Obviously, it's a neutral site for both of these teams.
Yeah, and it's a bigger ballpark than what these teams are used to. So it's a little harder to get the ball out. So I would lean more into the pitching staff, and I think Clemson is far and away better, especially when you're talking a day 3 starter now with this tournament going on in Arlington. So I'll be surprised if Clemson's not like a minus 180, 170 price, but it may be a good little parlay piece with somebody else.
Well, Matt, another one that caught my eye, you're talking about Clemson. They have really been out to a hot start, and you talked about them as maybe a team to look at as a good priced underdog in the futures market as well. Villanova and Michigan. Villanova, I think they won their initial game. Michigan, we know, walked it off in extra innings over Virginia in their first game on Friday. They will meet up, Villanova and Michigan, on Sunday. Any side that you'd lean towards here in this one?
Yeah, I think Michigan's just rolling out of momentum right now. I mean, 2-0. They struggled again at the plate today, but they still beat Rice 5-2, which is nothing really to write home about. Villanova, not much of a baseball school. I would roll Big Blue here. It's probably going to be outpriced of what you want to lay it, so maybe parlay that with Clemson.
I got one more here for you. Oh, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just speaking of Rice, they're going up against Virginia tomorrow, a team that you were very adamant about being awesome. So I would assume, again, no odds are posted, but Virginia going to be a pretty heavy favorite in that. Is this where we turn to a run line bet instead of a money line bet?
Possibly so. It depends on what it is. Virginia over Rice is probably going to be in that minus 350, 330 type range. So don't be afraid to money line parlay a couple of these heavy favorites. It was like just truth. Every weekend we got Paul Skeens and Rhett Lauder. You just parlayed Wake Forest and LSU. You didn't even think twice about it. So any of these bigger teams that you just know that they're going to win, even if it's 1-2 or 15-0, don't be afraid to parlay them. So I think Virginia gets the win tomorrow against Rice.
Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We'll do it again throughout this college baseball season. We're really excited about it. Appreciate your insights, and invite everybody to go check out your website, collegebaseballinsiders.com. Enjoy your Sunday and cash some more tickets, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, that is Matt Grissom. Check him out on Twitter or X, Grissom on X. Really good stuff there. Tom, are you ready for college baseball season now?
I am. My alma mater, Quinnipiac, lost to Georgia today, but we'll get into moving forward.
Very good. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Stick around on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into In-Game Live Game Day here on SportsGrid. Brady Kannon and Tom Vecchio. And thanks again to Matt Grissom for some college baseball insights. Good stuff, Tom. You and I were talking off air. I know you're a huge fan of betting on Major League Baseball, and it looks like maybe we've whetted your appetite now for a little college baseball betting. Just incredible, that resource that he has, collegebaseballinsiders.com, to go look up all the stats. Says he's really trying to become the Ken Palm, the fan graphs, for college baseball handicappers. And guy, you can't ask for a much better resource than that.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to me, is just having the information, the availability of the information, for me to dive into it, personally. Like if he comes on the show, whatever it might be in the future, he's like, oh, I really like this team today. Just for me to bet on it, it's like, the teach the man to fish, or, give a man a fish type of things. Like I'd rather have the information in front of me, and then I can and sort through it and parse through what I find valuable, and then make that actionable for myself. So that's absolutely fantastic. Obviously, we're 2 days, not even 2 full days, as we said, into the season. So obviously those stats will develop and even out as the days and weeks go on. We should touch on some college basketball just to give some quick updates. As we said, BYU, they were out to almost a 20-point lead that is down to 53-45. We gave all these updates, and you left out San Diego. You didn't mention San Diego being down.
I don't know why I did that.
37-21. They are down right now. First half, about 3.5 minutes left. Kansas clawing their way back versus Utah, down 22-17. And then we have that last game, which starts in about an hour and a half, as Hawaii is at home taking on UC Irvine. And then San Diego State and Boise State, which we spoke about, San Diego up 13-12. So college action full force right now.
I'm curious. So what the in-game, okay, there it is, San Diego State and Boise State. We talked about, and you mentioned it, I believe, with Jeff Dawson, Boise State pretty good defensively, San Diego State really good defensively. Yeah. And I believe that total was at around 134 or something like that prior to tip-off. It's now down much lower than that, 126.5. San Diego State up 13-12, 9 minutes left in the first half. I mean, think about that. They're more than halfway through the first half, and there's 25 points on the board.
Yeah, this is, between eye test and then some of the underlying metrics. And then, I always like to sprinkle in some of the atmosphere and or like schedule circumstances. Like, as I said, we're late in the season. This is not some game that these teams can be throwing away. Like, we are approaching crunch time for these teams that are fighting for seeding in terms of the conference, getting buys into the conference tournament, whatever it might be. So this game was screaming under basically from the jump. It's up to 127.5 now, 15-12 in favor of San Diego State. Like I said, I'm on Boise State at plus 2.5. They come away with a bucket here. So things are changing there. Four Nations coming out of a break there. The total has dropped to 4.5. It is minus 205 for over 4.5. Obviously, you'd be hoping that Canada ties it up, and then you would get that, automatically going over at that point. So 12 minutes left in that game. We can dive into college basketball for tomorrow. We can dive into MLB futures. I'm ready for anything, Brady.
Yeah. Well, I did want to, go back to college baseball here real quick. I did have a 5-pack of futures, and we talked about those with Matt, but I'll just mention them again. I've got Virginia, who I was disappointed to see lose their first game to Michigan, but they bounced back today and beat Villanova. I got Virginia at 10-1, and these aren't the best numbers. Matt, of course, is a seasoned shopper and better of college baseball. He was doing this back in November when there was much better numbers. I did these a couple of days ago. Virginia at 10-1, LSU at 10-1, Arkansas at 14-1, Florida at 20-1, and then North Carolina at 20-1. That Boise State, San Diego State game, that's a really good game. You talk about, the defensive intensity and this being late in the season where it matters more. these two teams are really vying for seeding, in the Mountain West Conference tournament. I mean, they're both tied for third place. They're pretty solid teams. Utah State is atop that conference, the Mountain West, but these two teams are right there underneath them and trying to jockey for position, possibly get the automatic bid if they can win that conference. Right now, 17-14 in favor of San Diego State, and the total ticking back up as we speak here, Tom, now up to 128.5. Utah now extending its lead over Kansas, 29-19. They are still an underdog in the live market. How about that? Utah plus 1.5 in the live market with a 10-point lead over Kansas. St. Mary's starting to pull away from Washington State and not looking great right now for my bet on the under as the in-game total is now 142.5. The closing number was about 139.5, and I did bet it to the under. Now a little bit on an over pace. And you mentioned San Francisco having no problem with San Diego, 39-25. And Gonzaga, this would be a sweat for you with the 25.5 points, right? 42-20, a 22-point lead right now for the Zags. Just under 4 minutes left in the first half. 42-20 in favor of Gonzaga. Anything that you see there on the board that you might want to jump in game?
Talking about this Utah-Kansas game, Utah's up by 10 points, and it's down to, half a point, a pick 'em basically. Jumping around 1 point, half point, whatever it might be, but up by 10 points, you're going to, if I can get to 2.5 again from Utah, how are they still getting points if they're up by 10?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And where is it here? Okay. Utah money line. Actually, now it's a pick 'em on the money line.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, if I could get a plus price on the money line, I might want to take it too. You're right. Basically a pick 'em, they're getting a half point, but yeah, that's a very interesting one there. I'll go back to the hockey here and basically ask you the same question. 11 minutes left in the third period. Surprisingly, this looks like it's going to be the very first game of this tournament that stays under the total, just 2-1 right now. Now halfway through the final period in favor of the United States, a minus 650 favorite on the money line. If you want, it's a big number. They're basically, begging you to take the under. If you want to go over 4.5, Tom, it's minus 160.
Yeah, that's a huge number. So at minus 160, you would want to see Canada score to give us 2-2, and then it has to have a fifth goal, right? We guaranteed a fifth goal at that point. I think the play to make, if anyone doesn't have action in this game, whatever it might be, I think the one bet to make would be the three-way money line for it to be a tie at plus 290. That implies, and it would also hit the over at 4.5. But instead of hitting over 4.5 and minus 146, minus 150, why not just bank on the tie at 2-2, wherever it might be, at 3-1 now? Canada ties it up, they go into overtime, and whoever wins, but you get a 3-1.
I think that's a great way to spin it, and I really like what you've done there. And personally, as a fan, I know you are not necessarily in favor of Canada here. You are pro-United States 100%. But as a fan, really enjoying this four nations face-off, I'd love to see a tie here and see some extra hockey. I think that would be – we've talked about it. We feel that these are the two best teams in the tournament. I'd love to see Canada tie it up and see some more pretty intense hockey between these two, what seems like rivals right from the get-go with 3 fights in the first 9 minutes.
Right, and it would also make Monday's games more important. I believe if they go to overtime, and this is something I'd have to double-check, if they go to overtime, then Monday's games for both teams are still must-wins, because if USA wins in regulation, they automatically qualify for the final on Thursday. But if they don't get the 3 points, that would change their path and points for Monday's games. So that's something that's important to know.
I really like that. It's a great point that you make, and I'd love to see that. I'd love to see some drama. I don't want to necessarily just see an automatic clinch here. I'd love to see a little drama fuel the fire of this tournament. Those Monday matchups, by the way, Canada and Finland, and the United States against Sweden. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Stick around. More SportsGrid.
some point, these 80s are to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into In-Game Live Game Day here on a Saturday night. Tom Vecchio and Brady Kannon rolling along with you, keeping eyes on the hockey game, the college basketball, talking a little college baseball with Matt Grissom a couple segments ago. Great insights there. Go check out his stuff, collegebaseballinsiders.com, and get into college baseball. This is a fantastic, for all you baseball handicappers out there, here's a whole new world for you to dive into. And speaking of baseball, Tom, I know you are a big baseball bettor. I like to bet baseball as well. I'm a huge baseball fan. I absolutely love baseball, have for a long time. I think probably still to this day, my very favorite sport of all is Major League Baseball postseason. I love postseason baseball. And I tell you, college baseball is making a run at it. I've become a big fan of that as well. But talk to me about, I've got a handful of season win total bets in my pocket for Major League Baseball coming up. Of course, pitchers and catchers have reported for a number of teams already. What are some preseason bets that you have in pocket?
So, my baseball process is like pretty in depth, and I've been going on the early line for years at this point with Ben and Donnie, and not to take a little bit of a victory lap. 2 years ago, I hit on Matt Olson at 28-1 to lead the league in home runs. Last year, nice. I hit on Bobby Witt at 19-1 to lead the league in hits. So once those markets are posted, I will be all over those. And sometimes they're just like, strikeout market is very difficult to beat just because pitchers and injuries and even missing 1 or 2 starts can put a pitcher 15 strikeouts behind, which is like an enormous hill to overcome. So I have 2 futures so far, and they're kind of chalky. So we just hear me out, because there's a way to still come out net profitable, and that is the Los Angeles Dodgers to beat the Mets in the NL championship at 10-1, and the Mets to beat the Dodgers. That is the result that this offseason, with free agency and the signings, that is the result that everyone is expecting. So if either of those happen, I will still come out net positive if either of those win. Now, obviously, I don't want to see those happen as a Yankees fan. I don't want to see either of those teams make it, but that's where I'm starting things off. The other market that I was looking at were the awards market. And when it comes to MVP and Cy Young, these are super, super, super top heavy with an Aaron Judge or a Bobby Witt or a Paul Skeens, whatever it might be. The one I was looking to take advantage of is the NL Comeback Player of the Year. Spencer Strider obviously missed nearly all of last year and is plus 550 to win NL Comeback Player of the Year. However, if we look at the NL Cy Young odds, Spencer Strider is 30-1. So Spencer Strider play to win the NL Comeback Player of the Year, he's probably having an awesome season on the mound. So I might as well grab Strider at 30-1 to win the NL Cy Young. And you can still grab the Comeback Player of the Year, but you're going to have an awesome closing line number, because if Strider gets off to a hot start and he stays healthy, before you know it, he's going to be sub 10-1 when you give him at 30-1. So I like trying to find these somewhat correlations in the market for awards, especially before the season starts.
Yeah, I really like the thinking there. Is Strider at plus 550? Is he the favorite to win Comeback Player of the Year?
He in the NL, he is not. It's Sandy Alcantara for the Marlins at plus 360. Strider's teammate Ronald Acuna at plus 500, and then Strider at plus 550. So there's a scenario where Strider if he won Cy Young, would he also win Comeback Player of the Year? Or like if Acuna is awesome,
I doubt it, right? He's probably one or the other, the way these awards work.
So like there's a scenario where he could win, obviously he could win Comeback Player of the Year and still not win Cy Young. Some other Skeens has another amazing year. So again, you have to figure out the math, what type of unit size is, quarter units on like a 30-1 is not your average minus 110 bet. That 30-1, I would have to look up what the implied odds on that, but implied probability, that's extremely low. And that's obviously different than a plus 300 future still. So finding these markets early season in any sport is obviously very, very fun. And also in baseball, just because there can be so much variance for a player that exceeds expectations or falls well short of them. That's why I like taking a lot of pitcher strikeouts unders, because, again, I don't want to root for injuries, but, man, 1 or 2 missed starts can set a pitcher back a long way.
That's a great point. And you know what happens with pitchers in this day and age. They all seem to get injured at some point. And you're right. You don't want to root for that, but you're also in the business to make money and make smart bets. And I don't think that's, a dumb way to go about it at all. You've talked about a couple of Atlanta Braves here, Spencer Strider, Acuna Jr., both in that Comeback Player of the Year market. And you talk about correlated bets. Does that also translate, and I lost on this one, unfortunately, does that also translate for you into a Braves to win the NL East bet? If both of those players are having great years and contending for those awards, then you would think, and I imagine the Braves are probably a favorite to win that division again. I have not looked at that price yet.
They are the favorite. It's plus 135 for that division. The Mets are plus 195, which is interesting considering all the moves they made. So I think the play would be Braves, or are they plus 135? Let's see what they are for the NL. They're plus 500 for the NL. Dodgers are plus 140, which is an insane price for a conference winner.
Amazing.
I think the play would be the National League Conference at 5-1 instead of the division, just because they can lose the division, win the wild card. Right. Obviously, the Mets are great. The Phillies are still there. So I think the division would, not the division for the Braves. The conference would be the play for the Braves if they do round into 4. And we have to remember, they are very aggressive at the trade deadline, making trades, extending players as they've all these players locked up to 2028 or 2030, whatever it is. So the conference play for the Braves would be the move.
Let's get into my season win total bets. By the way,
yes.
do you have any season win total bets at all made in hand,
Not yet.
in pocket? Okay.
Not yet. This is this week is where my process begins generally, and then player level bets, like digging into fan graphs. I can explain that process, applying variance to player projections. That starts now.
Okay, well, let's get on to that on the other side here, but I'll throw one out. I know we're getting ready to go to break, but I'll throw one out at you. We were talking about the Cincinnati Reds earlier. A lot of people are high on the Reds this season. Of course, Terry Francona comes back to manage that team. One guy that I have loved to bet on, especially in the role of an underdog, former Florida Gator pitcher Brady Singer, when he was with the Royals, loved betting on him as an underdog. He is now a member of the Cincinnati Reds, and I have bet over the season win total for the Cincinnati Reds, 78.5. We'll get Tom's thoughts on the other side as we return here on In-Game Live Game Day on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
San Diego State starting to pull away from Boise State in this Mountain West Conference tilt down in San Diego, 26-18. Just a minute and a half left in the first half. How about that for that total points there? 26-18. The in-game number has come all the way down to 119.5 as far as the total in that basketball game. We were talking about Utah and Kansas. Maybe we jumped the gun a little too quick here, thinking that Utah was going to walk away with this one. You can get the Utes now plus 4.5 as Kansas has gotten back into this contest. 32-30 now in favor of Utah. 2.5 minutes left to go in that one. And a lot of points being scored in Moraga, St. Mary's and Washington State. So far, it does not look like I was right on staying under the total in this one. 38-34, the in-game total all the way up to 147.5. San Francisco over San Diego, 42-31. Gonzaga still taking it to Pepperdine, 55-26, and the Zags 38.5 point favorites in the in-game market. And then finally, BYU and Kansas State. It's all Cougars here, 73-53 in favor of BYU. They are 18.5 point favorites in the live market. Okay, before we went to break, I threw the Cincinnati Reds win total out at you, Tom. I have chosen to go over 78.5. What do you think?
I do like that. And it's buying into a variety of things, like you said. New manager in there, a lot of young talent, obviously led by Ellie David Cruz, making trades. This is the time for them to put it all together. And the question I would have is, as Team USA puts in an empty net goal to go up 3-1, Jake Gensel coming through with that. So if you have a shot prop on him or another goal for him, that is huge. The question I would have is, do you like them to make the playoffs? Because generally on a year-to-year basis, I always try and find a team sitting at decent plus money that I'd like to make the playoffs. And I've gone back over the years and said, and just looked at simple math. It's not some like crazy advanced stat of saying like, okay, on average, how many wins does a team need to have to make the playoffs in X conference? Because if I like them to make the playoffs, do I also like their team win total? Like kind of reverse engineering it. So like, do you like their win total coming up and then their playoffs coming down to try and find a nice middle spot?
I think it's a great way, again, another angle to look at things. And my initial reaction would be to say, yes, I like them to make the playoffs. I love Francona as a manager. I kind of indirectly know him a little bit. He's a very good friend of a family friend. But he did great things, obviously, with the Guardians. Back then it was the Indians. I just love him, as finding a way to make his team successful. And it's great to see him back in the game. But you also look at that division. I know the Brewers have kind of ruled the roost there for the last couple of seasons, but it's the Central Division in both the American League and the National League that's pretty soft. And, I think that translates into up for grabs. I mean, I don't know if the Pirates are going to do anything anytime soon, but, the Reds, the Cardinals, it just feels like basically anybody can win the National League Central any given year. And so, I think the win total bet is probably a little bit more conservative than the make the playoffs bet. But I think, given that division, I would probably lean towards the yes, Tom.
Okay. And this is something that I know a lot of people like to do across various sports, obviously, just because MLB's, about to start. This is what we're going to get into. But finding ways to win multiple bets on one team, which team is going to exceed their win total. The question I would float out there is how far up the ladder would you go with them? Because there are alternate markets, at least on the FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can take some teams to win 80 plus games, 70 plus games, 90 plus games, whatever it might be. So will you try and find a team that can exceed 70 and get to 80, maybe flirt with 90?
I don't think I will.
Okay.
And especially in the National League, because we know the Dodgers are so dominant in the senior circuit. And you have to figure that, I mean, obviously they're the favorite to win the pennant. They're the favorite to win that division. So I don't necessarily want to get too aggressive with other teams, to make the playoffs, to win the pennant, all that type of stuff. I'm going to stick here with these bets for now. And obviously the season's not too far away. I'm going to have to act quick if I come up with more ways to, like you say, ladder these teams up. But right now, just sticking with win totals. And part of the reason is because, I think it's pretty top heavy in the National League at the top. And I don't know if I want to bank on some of these lower ranking teams, if you will, to make a big splash. We'll see. More baseball talk on the other side here. It's in-game live game day on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are to learn, we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience, who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch. but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to In-Game Live Game Day here on SportsGrid, the fourth and final hour of the program. We appreciate you sticking around and joining us on this Saturday evening, however you may be taking it in on SiriusXM Channel 159, all the television and online streaming services, on Twitter, what have you. We're all over the place. It is the grid, and you know it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Well, right now, Tom, we're trying to make people smarter about this upcoming baseball season. But first, I do want to report the hockey game has come to an end in Montreal. Team USA and Team Canada. The Americans advance. Team USA over Canada 3-1. The game stays well under the total. Of course, the total prior to puck drop was 6.5. They lit the lamp early in the first period. It was 1-1 before we could really blink, and that in-game total shot up to 7.5. And then from there on, it just started to creep down lower and lower and lower, eventually to 4.5. And it did not even make it over that number. 3-1, your final. The United States winning in regulation, they will advance to the final championship game.
They will. Again, I don't want to take another victory lap, but I said it multiple times this week on SportsGrid with Dave Sharapan, Scott Wetzel. I said over 1.5 in the first period, but still under 6.5 for the entire game. Teams will come out with energy, which they did. I wasn't expecting 3 fights in the first 2 minutes, but that's what we got. Under 6.5 comes through, which is great. Team USA, as you said, they've clinched a spot into the finals. Canada, they do control their own destiny on Monday at 1 p.m. versus Finland. If they win in regulation, they will set up a rematch in the finals for to play Team USA. There's obviously a ton of different permutations on if they win, but it's in overtime. And what if Team USA loses? What if Team USA starts their second or third string goalie and I'm not going to say allows Sweden to beat them, but there are different permutations of what can and cannot happen. Let's jump into some back to baseball because you have another team win total.
Yeah, I do want to just touch on what the numbers are already out here on FanDuel for those hockey games on Monday. 1:10 Eastern time, Canada and Finland. Canada a minus 320 favorite on the money line. Your total at 5.5, heavily juiced to the over. Sweden and the United States, that one goes to puck drop at 8:10 Eastern time in the evening, and the United States a minus 260 favorite on the money line. Interesting price there with him having already locked up a spot in the championship match. Okay.
The play is Sweden.
Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Better than 2-1, right?
And honestly, the play is Sweden in 60 minutes. They're 3-way money line at plus 330. Not to say that they're going to beat Team USA because Team USA is still better overall. But what's better, beating Canada or not even having to face Canada?
Well, here's the thing, too. Not only is this game relatively meaningless for the United States, they come off of a very emotional win over their rival in Canada. Yeah. So it absolutely could be a letdown spot for the United States for multiple reasons.
It is important to note that they are traveling to Boston now. The first few games were in Montreal. They're now shifting to Boston for the final few games.
So there's a little home ice advantage possibly there, but yeah, interesting price anyway. We'll see if we get involved on Monday for the Four Nations face-off. Let's get back to the baseball, like you say, my friend. And we were talking about, finding that team that the expectation as far as the Vegas number, in that 80-something wins, do you ladder them up to 90 and then start piling on to make the playoffs and pennant and division and all? Do you kind of lock in on one team that is maybe a little bit under the radar? And we see it all the time in the NFL. I mean, the Washington Commanders, for God's sakes, right? And the Houston Texans a couple seasons ago. A lot of teams go from worst to first. It happens in the NFL all the time. And, baseball is no stranger to that as well. So here's a team. The win total is 82.5. And I went over, and that is the Cleveland Guardians.
Okay.
What are your thoughts there?
So I see 83.5. It is minus 106 on the over, 114 on the under. So
it's already been
difference.
Bet up. I'd move the market there, Tom, I'm sure.
Always shop for the best lines available. So over 82.5, and then do you have a play on them for the division?
No, I don't. That was just something you were kind of introducing as, is that a team that, you have that much faith in? Would you kind of, take them to a number of different levels in the way you're going to back them? And you were saying kind of looking for that team that you expect to be, a handful of games above 500, which, going over 82.5 would lead you to that. It's not that many more wins to get you to 90. So in your mind, is Cleveland one of those candidates where you would kind of ladder them up, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so. And part of my process, which I kind of briefly explained when I, talked about Bobby Witt or Matt Olson, is like when I start looking at either team level projections or player level projections, baseball is a highly variable sport. So if you are using a strong set of projections, which I've always said I don't do my own, I've never done my own projections. I use Fangraphs, I use different sources. If you just apply like 10% variance to them, and their win total is 82, 83.5. If you apply 10% variance positively and negatively, you now have a range of outcomes instead of one specific number. So if they do hit that upper end on a plus 10% variance, we're now touching or getting closer to 90 wins. So that does put them within this market. And again, whether it's a team at 72.5 and you want to say maybe they touch 80, they're not going to make the playoffs, so you wouldn't bet on that, but they can still touch 80 wins. Whatever the team or teams that you like, you can find multiple ways to bet them. So I think Cleveland is in that ballpark. So if I do end up on Cleveland, it will be over their win total. It will be a smaller unit on 90 plus because that is sitting at plus 245. And then it would be a small play on the division. So when we or you are right about Cleveland, you are really right about them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, here's another one for you. We'll get to one more here before the break. And now this one is not a candidate where you might do some other bets on top of it, but I do believe this team will be successful this year, exceed expectations anyway. The win total is 70.5. So not a fantastic season expected, but I think they can get over that. And that is the Washington Nationals.
Okay. So a lot of young talent on Washington. It is juiced a little bit to the over minus 118. I'm certainly okay with that. Bad teams are going to win, 80 some odd games and they're terrible, right? Or they're going to win 75 games. That is a bad team, but baseball is a highly variable sport. I think buying into a team like Washington is also buying into maybe the Mets not as hot, starting out as hot. Maybe the Braves with still some injuries, they're not starting out as hot, or it takes them time to get rolling. So I'm okay with Washington. I wouldn't say the same thing about Miami in that same division. I wouldn't say the same thing about the Chicago White Sox. I wouldn't say the same thing about Oakland playing in a new ballpark, which will certainly bring an interesting fold when it comes to strikeout props and hitting props in a completely new ballpark. Same thing with the Tampa Bay Rays, who aren't playing at home due to their stadium, obviously the devastation with the hurricane. So I would say Washington may be one of the low-tier teams that I have the most confidence in.
All right. I like the endorsement. We were talking about the National League East, of course, the Mets, the Braves. We've talked about the Nationals. What do you think about the Philadelphia Phillies? I mean, they were a team I was basically betting against last year when I placed the bet on the Braves to win the division. But, here come the Phillies late in the season and went on to break my ticket there.
I think the Phillies have been the team for me where I almost want them to start off slow because I know they have what it takes when it comes down to crunch time. So don't want to bet on them, want them to start slow, and then midseason you get a better number on them.
That's exactly what they did for you last season, and it worked out quite nicely for the Philadelphia Phillies. It wasn't, we were down to the last couple months of the season. It really hurt me when Acuna got hurt for Atlanta. Yeah. And then they were so devastated by injury down the stretch where the Atlanta Braves last year really didn't have a shot to win that division in the end. We'll take a look at the college basketball scoreboard and continue with the baseball talk when we return here on In-Game Live Game Day right here on SportsGrid. Stick around.
there is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs have a 5.5 game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5 game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into In-Game Live Game Day. Brady Kannon and Tom Vecchio with you, taking a look at the college basketball scoreboard. San Diego State and Boise State just underway in the second half. 19 and a half minutes left to go there in the second half. And it is 31-18, all Aztecs right now. And the in-game total all the way down to 115 and a half. Utah hanging on to a 2-point advantage over Kansas. They are currently at halftime in Salt Lake, 39-37. Utah getting 4.5 points. They were at tip-off getting 6.5 points. Now 4.5-point dogs with a 2-point lead after 20 minutes of basketball. St. Mary's and Washington State, the Gales up by 10 on the Cougars, 44-34. Your in-game total at 145.5. San Francisco all over San Diego, 49-33 on Gonzaga. Nearly a 40-point favorite in game. They went off prior to tip as 25.5-point favorites, 66-33. They're up by 33 on Pepperdine. And again, 39.5-point favorites in game. And BYU looks like they have closed out Kansas State. I believe this one is final. BYU wins it by 15. Interesting there. Oof. We saw the in-game total at 12.5. I saw as high as 18.5. Kind of falls in the middle there. They closed as 7.5 or 8-point favorites. They cover easily at home, 80-65. I believe that is a final over Kansas State. Okay, back to the baseball. I've got one more team that I have a season win total bet on, Tom, and I'd like to get your opinion. And you kind of, You revealed your hand a little bit earlier on a comment we were making about the National League East, but we'll go full-fledged into your opinion here. Now, the number is 63, and I went under on the Miami Marlins.
So I'm seeing under 63 minus 128. Obviously, there's a little bit of juice on a win total. The top portion of that division with 3 strong teams are really, really strong. So to see them beat up on a team in the Marlins that have spent very, very little money in the offseason would not be a surprise. I'm okay with it. And this does leave you some outs because if they're approaching 63, 64 wins, you can simply bet on, them to win a game. So you do have some options when it comes to that, that final portion of the season, late August or September, whatever it might be. So the under is okay. It's minus 128. I would hope that you got it closer to minus 110.
Yeah, I want to say it's possibly minus 120. Let me see if I can find it here for you.
And this is what a lot of people don't talk about enough, at least in my opinion, is, the same total, but it's a minus 115 versus a minus 120, minus 130. That, we're talking about different things here. And I talked about it with Joe Ranieri a couple of weeks ago when I was doing in-game live, like, we see a 7, but it's as an in-game number, but it's 7 minus 130 versus 6.5 minus 115. Like, those are different bets, and people don't necessarily talk about that enough.
Yep, I would agree with you wholeheartedly, and thankfully I did get it at minus 110, so pretty good number there. And there's no hook on it. It's exactly 63. Usually there's a hook on these season win totals, but just a straight 63 I took under, it is minus 110. So obviously, 63 and a half, a lot different than just 63, but we'll see if hopefully it's a no sweat bet. I thought these were a couple of interesting props here, and this is locally posted in Las Vegas at Circa, which is an excellent sports book, one of the sharpest sports books in the world. And these are kind of team regular season prop bets, if you will. The Dodgers to have, and like to know which way you would go here, the Dodgers to have the most regular season wins in 2025. The yes is minus 225. The no is almost 2-1, plus 195. Do you want to take the juicy dog price on the no?
I almost don't want to see the Dodgers succeed anymore, so I would just be on the no. And a part of me thinks that the Dodgers, I don't want to say given the injuries that they've had over the past few years, but they know what it takes to win. And taking their foot off the gas, when I would assume they have the division locked up, wouldn't surprise me. I'm not going to say they're not going to be trying, but to see them be healthy going into the playoffs with a 6 or 7 man rotation so they can rest Glass now, they can rest Ohtani if he's pitching, I wouldn't be surprised to see them not finish with the best record.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from there. There are, I think, reasons you can make a case that, they'll take their foot off the gas, what have you. And it almost seems like they're becoming so stacked. It's like, are the baseball gods going to frown on them eventually? And it kind of feels to me like it would be dog or pass there, the no or pass. Yeah. How about we go opposite here? The Chicago White Sox, who you mentioned earlier, most regular season losses in 2025. Yes, they will have the most losses, minus 250. No, they will not have the most losses, plus 215.
So I'm on board with the White Sox being absolutely horrible, but if I'm going to be betting on the no, at least I'm seeing the worst regular season record, which we would have to clarify the differences. Is it the worst regular season record, or is it the most losses? Obviously, this is based on winning percentage, at least over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. The Rockies are also absolutely terrible, and they're at plus 270 to have the worst regular season record. So if you said it was at plus 210, I might as well just bet on the Rockies at plus 270.
Yeah, right. This is plus 215 to have the most regular season losses.
Okay. So, again, every book is different in terms of like the house rules, in terms of what they qualify, in terms of worst record, most losses, et cetera, et cetera. But the Rockies are neck and neck with them as being absolutely terrible. So I would side with the Rockies. I would say there's a slight shred of hope for the White Sox. Again, we're talking about variance in baseball where a couple of games that they blew last year, maybe they win 3 of those, 4 of those. I'm not talking about saying that they're going to be good, but, man, give me the Rockies for being the worst team this year.
You talk about, doing something positive with these teams that you think are going to be good. Would you also kind of pound on these teams that you think are going to be bad and bet, no playoffs, under season win total? Would you go all in on the no on teams like the White Sox and the Colorado Rockies?
And the Angels.
And the Angels. All right. More baseball talk coming up on the other side as we continue on In-Game Live Game Day.
there is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs had a 5.5 game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5 game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into In-Game Live Game Day here on SportsGrid. Brady Kannon and Tom Vecchio with you on a Saturday evening. Thank you for sticking around. We'll take you all the way to the top of the hour. And then, of course, we're back with more on Sunday. BYU won beating Kansas State at home in Provo by 15. They're also winning on the road at Fresno State, top of the 9th inning in college baseball. So don't forget about college baseball going on, a full slate of action on Sunday on the College Diamonds for you as well. Talking a little baseball here, we went over my season win total bets. Thankfully, Tom basically agrees with all of those. So hopefully we can root those home and cash some tickets in that regard. Looking at some other markets here, and I'm looking at one of the most well-respected books in the world right here in Las Vegas, Circa Sports. We went over a couple of their kind of prop bets for teams, most season wins for the Dodgers, most losses, regular season losses for the Chicago White Sox. I want to get into the Major League Baseball player with the most home runs. I want to look at this market. And I think we uncovered something here that is very interesting. One of the players that you're high on. First of all, Aaron Judge is the favorite at plus 450. Shohei Ohtani at plus 850. Kyle Schwarber, I think he's kind of interesting. We know he has plenty of pop where he can hit a number of home runs. He's at 13-1. Pete Alonso, 17-1. Fernando Tatis Jr. at 17-1. Brent Rooker of the A's at 35, Yordan Alvarez at 20-1. So he's taken some action there. Also, Juan Soto has taken a little action. He's down to 24, along with Matt Olson at the Braves at 24-1. And then it jumps back up to Marcell Ozuna of the Braves at 55. But you scroll down the list here, and a guy that has his price has really plummeted and obviously taking some action here at Circa is the guy you really like for this market, and that's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. of the Blue Jays. You said you saw him at 45-1 to have the most home runs in baseball. Here at Circa, he's at 27-1.
Yeah, so I just locked in Vladdy Jr. at 45-1 to lead the league, home runs leader this season. Now, obviously, there's a lot of external factors with the contract negotiations, lack thereof from him, not getting an extension he thinks he deserves, all these sorts of things. So just to break things down pretty quickly, a lot of people say his power dropped off last year. Last year, he still had a 221 ISO. He only equated that to 30 home runs. His strikeout rate was still only 13.8%. Last season, his barrel rate was at 13.7%, which was actually the highest since 2021. His hard contact rate was still at 41.2%. The issue was his fly ball rate was at 33.4%. You can fix the fly ball, generating fly balls. As long as the hard contact is still there, the strikeouts are still low, and the barrel rate is still there, you can fix the fly balls pretty easily. So if I'm buying into a player that I think has extra motivation because of the contract and, was he going to be traded? Was he going to walk in the offseason? Whatever it might be, the kind of like the big middle finger to the Blue Jays franchise to go out there and say, like, this is what you're missing. I'm going to go out and post 45 or 50 home runs, and you should have paid me, and now I'm gone. So we have great underlying metrics, and we have a phenomenal price at 45-1 for Vladdy to lead the league in home runs. I'm locked in.
Well, I think it's also telling, part of handicapping, there are so many different elements to handicapping. And I think part of it is market reading. And when you have a very sharp book that is basically half the price that you're being offered, I think that tells you something as well. Not that it's going to be right, but you're obviously getting a very good price on a player or a bet that a lot of very sharp people like already.
Right. And this is something I talked about throughout the football season with Dave Sherapan when we do the Monday and Thursday night pregame shows. Sometimes it's reasonable to make a play on the price, right? Where it's like, hey, we may not love the bet, but there's a clear market inefficiency somewhere. And I want to make a play on the price rather than saying like, oh, this is something that I absolutely believe in. It's absolutely going to happen. You take the price because you may have some type of closing line value.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, some people bet only with that in mind. They don't even necessarily know the teams. They're betting price, they're betting value, they're betting perceived value. Anyway, quick question here before we go to break. You've got the bet on Vladdy at 45-1. Do you kind of somewhat hedge that a little bit and put a little on a favorite as well? An Ohtani or a Judge, a Schwarber, or whatever, just to kind of, as a safety net.
I may pick someone else, but I can't bring myself to bet on a player less than 10-1 to lead the league in home runs. Like, home runs are extremely variable. Like 270 for Judge is what I see. I could never do that. I would take Schwarber.
All right, very good. More in just a moment. Stick around.
Slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scavern, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience, who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's is offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night, but it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire. only on SportsGrid.
The only thing left in question about Gonzaga and Pepperdine is what number you bet the Zags at and if they are going to cover it. It is now 88-49, 8 minutes left in Spokane there with Gonzaga out on top. 42.5 is the in-game number, Tom. Have you ever seen a college basketball game with an in-game number like that? The in-game total, by the way, at 170.5. Again, Gonzaga, make it 89. They are now up by 40, 89-49. 8 and change left there. Gonzaga taking care of Pepperdine with no problems whatsoever. San Francisco over San Diego, 63-41. Washington State and St. Mary's, the Gales now pulling away in Moraga, 59-42. Your in-game total coming down a tick, a good sign if you're an under-better like me. 148.5 is now the in-game total. And Utah still hanging on outright over Kansas. Again, they went off as 6.5-point dogs. They are now, get this, Tom, 3.5-point favorites with 13 minutes left in regulation, 55-47, and now it's come down. 2.5-point favorites are the Utes, leading the Jayhawks of Kansas 55-47, your in-game total at 155.5. And then Boise State and San Diego State, a good one, a battle for bragging rights, not bragging rights, but positioning rather in the Mountain West Conference, 46-25. It's all Aztecs right now. Your in-game total at 114.5, your in-game number at 17.5 in favor of San Diego State. That seems like quite a bit for a team that went off as roughly a 2 or 2.5-point favorite. All right, back to the what do you like?
Like I said, I'm on the under.
That's a ton.
Yeah, it
Very
was
good.
135 or so, and it's now 114. That is, love a good under in college.
Yeah, and I think at this point, and now it's creeped down to 16.5, with that original spread being roughly 2.5, I think I would have to take the dog here. Utah laying 4.5. You and I liked them when they were in the position of an underdog in game, but now laying, and now it's come down, now laying 3.5. I think they're going to win the game. I mean, the money line is minus 225. That seems expensive with still 12.5 minutes left in the game. But I do think they are going to beat Kansas, which, a pretty darn disappointing season for Kansas. This is basketball, royalty, right? For them to lose at Utah would be something. Utah has not had a very good season at all. Washington and St. Mary's, I mentioned Washington State, 59-42, no change there, and 91-52, Gonzaga leading Pepperdine. All right, another baseball market here that they've got posted at Circa Sports, and very interesting to see some of these different numbers where it looks like guys have, they've adjusted the market according to money that they're taking in, of course. And they're, you're able to kind of see here where some guy has been hit because they start with the shortest odds and it continues to get bigger. Then all of a sudden some guy's in there at a real low number or something like we saw in the home run market with Vladimir Guerrero. The favorite, and I believe there's a price discrepancy here. The favorite to have, this is a pitcher with the most regular season pitching strikeouts. Who is going to be the league leader? Paul Skeens is the favorite at plus 650. I believe you saw the price at around plus 350.
Yeah, it is plus 350. Skubal is number 2 at plus 600. So, we always say this, always shop for the best lines available, and like 350 to 650, that is a massive, massive discrepancy. So if you are interested in these types of markets, obviously before the season gets started, shop around because, man, you do not want to be taking a number when there is something significantly better out there. And this, assuming that you have access to that number, that of course. So that's something that needs to be said. Just because there is a number out there, you may not have access to it.
That's exactly right. This, of course, in Nevada. There are other states that have Circa Sports. I know Illinois and Iowa and I believe Colorado as well. Tariq Skubal, plus 1050 here at Circa. Dylan Cease at 18-1. Garrett Crochet at 14-1. And the numbers continue to get bigger, all the way into the neighborhood of 50, 60, 100, 85. Sean Manea, 225-1. But I thought this was interesting. All of a sudden, for the Texas Rangers at 30-1, Jacob deGrom. You want any part of that?
He's 20-1 here, and no. The answer is no. Even you gave him to me at 100-1, 500-1. I would still say no. It's not worth it. He is old. He has had so many injury issues over the past few years. And even if he were to be healthy, wouldn't the plan for the Rangers to have him healthy for the postseason? Wouldn't that be the plan? Like, you don't need him throwing 10 strikeouts a game in June and July. You need him healthy, ready to go for the postseason, which is why you paid him. So I don't want any part of Jacob deGrom. And frankly, even if he is healthy and there's some type of hype around it, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to take unders on his strikeouts because a star player, those numbers are so heavily bet. And when we see 7.5 strikeout props posted and there's juice on the over, give me the under time and time again, especially early in the season.
Now, you're a guy that's high on the Mets. You said you liked them in a scenario, an exacta scenario for the pennant with the Dodgers. Kodai Senga at 45-1 to have the most strikeouts for New York.
Okay, that's interesting. So at least through some of the projections I'm looking at here, I have to see where he falls because if he's at a decent price in terms of A, his pricing in terms of the book, and then B, where I have his projections at. He's at 27th, at least I'm searching quickly on Fangraphs. So then take all these, I would average them out. If I could get him closer to the top 15 plus a little, 10% variance as I like to apply positively, that may be worth it. Because at least the numbers that I have based on where he sits on in terms of the betting odds, that differential is something worth betting on.
Another guy that you mentioned earlier, not necessarily in this vein, but part of that Dodgers rotation, Tyler Glasnow, who was injured for a great deal of last season. Tyler Glasnow to have the most regular season strikeouts, plus 3750.
So I see Glasnow at 4,500. I cannot bet on Glasnow because he is the anchor of my dynasty team, and I already have enough invested into him. So I don't want to bet more on him knowing that I need him to do well for me already. So there are times I actually bet on a lot of players that I have on different dynasty teams. I bet on their unders, especially pitchers, because if I win the bet, then I win the bet. And if I don't win the bet, I'm going to lose bets along the way, as everyone loses bets. And then if they're hitting the over on their strikeouts, well, that's good for my dynasty team in the long run. So I have a very difficult time betting on players that I have on my teams, Glasnow being one of the main guys.
You mentioned not long ago, Tom, that it is probably this coming week where you're going to start diving into season win totals and really starting to get deep into the weeds with some of your baseball preseason future bet handicapping. Are there any teams right now that you're thinking you're already pretty certain you're going to bet over or under their season win total?
The Diamondbacks have a good rotation. That's where I think things would start. I think the Red Sox, as much as I don't like them as a Yankees fan, they did make some good moves there. What we get out of the Rangers and what we get out of Seattle, I'll have a lot of interest in based on some of the moves that the Astros made in the offseason, trading away Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman didn't resign. What we get from the Astros, I think, not only will determine what they do this season, but will also impact the other teams in that division. If they're not going to be picking up as many wins, does that help other teams push towards their overs, whatever it might be?
You mentioned you don't necessarily, and I wonder if this is true, gravitate towards a division bet. You'd rather bet a team to make the playoffs because that way they don't necessarily have to win the division. They can pick up a wild card, what have you. We can get to this on the other side, but I want to know if you have a team in mind that you are thinking that you're probably going to land on for to win the division bet. Again, we're going to break here. You can take a minute to think about that one. A team to win the division, either American League or National League, when we return right here on In-Game Live Game Day on SportsGrid.
slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scoverin, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's is offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night. But it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
They have hit the century mark in Spokane. Gonzaga up to 100-52. They lead Pepperdine 49.5 is the in-game number, 168.5 the live total. Washington State and St. Mary's 64-50 in favor of St. Mary's. Your in-game total at 147.5. Just under 8 minutes left to go in that one. Utah hanging on and extending their lead over the Kansas Jayhawks. The numbers are currently frozen, but just under 10 minutes left to go in regulation there, and Utah up 60-51. This would be a huge win, the win of the season, really, for the Utah Utes. And San Diego State, just 85 total points on the board down at the Viejas Center, 50-35 in favor of the Aztecs. Your in-game total, Tom, you'll be happy to hear, is down to 111.5. We continue with the base. Yeah, absolutely. That one looks pretty good. And now it creeped up to 112.5, but you've got under 135.5 and under 7 minutes left in regulation here. I think you're looking pretty good. Let's continue with the baseball talk here. We've touched on a lot of different markets, season win totals, most home runs, most regular season losses, most strikeouts. How about a team to win the division? Or, if you want to interject that you'd rather, play them to make the playoffs, any team, any division that you kind of like their chances to win respective division?
It may come back down to one of the teams I just briefly touched on would be the Rangers. And, they have the offense to get it done. Obviously, last year, a lot of injuries for them. The problem with MLB, and a lot of these divisions are structured the same way, where we have 2 or 3 teams, maybe 4 teams, and then there's just one really deep long shot that we're never going to bet on. We're never betting on the White Sox. We're never betting on the Rockies, all these teams. So the Twins, the Tigers, the Guardians, the Royals, all these teams are super close. The same thing with the West, the Astros, Mariners, Rangers. Same thing with the NL East, same thing with the NL Central, and then it's just complete opposite in the NL West, where it's just the Dodgers and then everyone else. So finding value in these markets is tough. And I think the Rangers bring a 2-to-1 price. It's not like some crazy, crazy long shot. They have the ability to get it done. And the division is kind of up for grabs when they're tied with the Mariners. And the Astros are sitting at plus 170. So you can get the Rangers at plus 200 to win the division. And then their playoff odds are to make the playoffs, they are minus 108. So that's a reasonable number.
Yeah.
Then I would look at their win total, which is 81 and not 81 and a half. That's Tampa, not Texas. 85 and a half plus 100 on the over.
Well, here at the Westgate Superbook, another very reputable book here in Las Vegas, the Rangers are plus 225 to win the division. The Mariners are 2-1, and the Astros are plus 160. The A's and the Angels are both 29-1. So, like you spelled out there, there's a couple of teams that are just huge long shots. Wouldn't expect the A's or the Angels to win the division. The Rangers do seem like a good bet there because the book is telling you it's a 3-team race. And, why not take the biggest shot there? And you talked about the Astros, unloading some of their pieces as well. I mentioned I have an over-season win total bet on the Cleveland Guardians. They're pretty much a pick 'em to win that division with the Tigers. They're at plus 250. The Tigers at plus 260. I mean, this is a 4-team race here. The White Sox are off the page, basically. The Royals and the Twins are both plus 280. The Tigers plus 260 and the Guardians plus 250. Take your pick. That's a toss-up there.
Yeah, and this is part of it what's tough, and we've seen this not just coming into this season, but we've seen this over the past few years and the Royals obviously made their push last year, but we've generally seen a 3-team race in the AL Central, a 3, maybe 4-team race in the NL Central as well. We're not getting massive discrepancy on some of these prices in terms of teams, plus 290 to plus 310, plus 250. These aren't dramatically different prices. The division that's the most interesting outside of the NL West, because there's no real bet to make there, I think is the AL East. Because if you believe in the Orioles or you believe in the Red Sox, as maybe not some of the producers behind the scenes don't believe in the Orioles, but 2.5 to 1 compared to the Yankees at plus 100, that's a decent drop off. And if you're willing to say, okay, if the Yankees take a step back, even though they did make some offseason acquisitions, if they falter a little bit, what does that mean for the rest of the teams in the division?
Yeah. Here at the Superbook, the Yankees are even money, like you say, plus 100. The Orioles are plus 280. So even a little more juicy on the Orioles at plus 280. The Red Sox are 4-1. And then the Blue Jays, this is pretty interesting. The Blue Jays are 18-1, but the Tampa Bay Rays are 12-1, a little bit shorter. Are they worth a shot at 12-1?
The Rays, I don't think so. The Blue Jays, and if they're plus 1,300 to win the division, their playoff odds are also probably long at plus 245. That's okay. I wouldn't mind a Blue Jays playoff ticket rather than a Blue Jays division ticket. They're not the best team in the division. If one of the Yankees or the Orioles falter, both of them won't. So one of them will falter, which will open up a wild card spot. That's the way I would look at it.
You're a Yankees fan. Are you comfortable betting the Yankees at even money to win the division?
I'm comfortable betting the Yankees. I would never bet them at even money. There's just not enough value there for me personally. I think they can win the division, but I would never bet plus 100 division odds. That's regardless of sport, regardless of fandom. I wouldn't bet on the Dodgers at plus 100.
Oh, I would. If you gave me the Dodgers are minus 1,000 to win the division.
I know, but something like baseball, long season, a lot of variance, plus 100 on a future, locking that up for 6 months that's just a personal thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's expensive because you're betting a lot to win a little, right? And most people like to bet a little to win a lot, but sometimes, you talked about it earlier, being price sensitive. Floyd Mayweather, you had to lay a lot of money, but he was a pretty darn good bet. He was always value, right?
We'll be back in a minute. Coming up against a break right now. Stay tuned. In-game live game day here on SportsGrid.
slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scover and when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night. But it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Final segment here, in-game live game day on SportsGrid. Brady Kannon and Tom Vecchio with you, checking the college basketball scoreboard here. San Francisco all over San Diego. Looks like they're going to get the win and the cover. They were about 13-point favorites. I think it closed around 12.5. 73-56 right now. The in-game number is 8.5 in favor of the Dons. St. Mary's up on Washington State 70-54. And guess what, Tom? That in-game total, right at the number, 139.5. 4 minutes left in this game. It is on pace for exactly where that number was prior to tip. Utah up on Kansas by 6, 60-54. They are 2.5-point favorites in the live market. 7 minutes to go in that one. And the total continues to creep down in San Diego State and Boise State. 109.5 is the live number. The Aztecs on top of the Broncos, 53-41 with 3.5 minutes left to go in regulation. A couple college basketball games on Sunday. If you have a liking for either one of these, Tom, let us know. Michigan, Ohio State, the football rivalry turned over to the hardwood here, and the Buckeyes laying 2.5 points at home. This is an unranked team facing a ranked team, and yet the unranked team is favored.
Yeah, I think this game is about the under. The under. If we're going to expect an unranked team at home to win, it probably means some type of offensive inefficiency from the favorite. If they're not scoring, it would lead me to the under. I saw 150.5, I should say, here. I think that would be the spot to go. Again, unders may not be the most exciting thing for everybody, but I'm expecting maybe Michigan comes out a little bit flat. That's where I would lean initially.
Yeah, I can understand that. Certainly if Ohio State is in the role of the favorite there, you expect them to clamp down on defense. Makes sense to me. The other one, a couple of marquee teams out of the Big East, and there's been a lot of buzz about St. John's. They've really been on a run. Now, they are coming off of a loss earlier this week to Villanova, upset as a small favorite. They are back at home here, laying 5.5 to the Blue Jays of Creighton.
Yeah, it was 6.5. It's now down to 5.5. It is juice minus 120. I'm also seeing a 5.5 minus 115. Obviously, keep that in mind. Creighton and the under. I think that's the play in this. Both teams do play to the under this year. Again, St. John's coming off a loss, like you said, like time to reel things in, want to shore things up before, obviously, they get to the conference tournament and move into March Madness. And then they may win this game, but I'm not sure if they're going to be covering. So give me Creighton and the under.
Yeah, I could buy into that, the under for sure. And I know it's built into the price, but St. John's, one of the very best defensive teams in the country. Pitino really has them playing great defense. All right, let's move over to the ice. Of course, the Four Nations face-off. We saw Team USA prevail over Team Canada earlier tonight, 3-1 the final. That one stays under the total. Prior to puck drop, that total was 6.5. Only 4 goals scored as Team USA prevails 3-1. They will advance into the finals, but who will they face? On Monday, Canada will take on Finland, and Sweden will take on the United States. And the United States still a pretty heavy favorite, though we have seen some money come in on Sweden, Tom. The United States minus 235 on the money line. Sweden was at about plus 215, now at plus 190.
That makes sense to me. We kind of talked about Sweden, they still have full motivation to play and win, right? If they pick up 3 points, and theoretically if Canada doesn't pick up any, again, it comes down to the table, 3 points, 2 points, whatever it might be. So there's plenty of motivation on the Sweden side of things. I am almost 100% sure we will not be seeing Connor Hellebuyck play for Team USA. They'll give him the game off. It'll be either Jake Ottinger, who's the goalie for the Dallas Stars, or Jeremy Swayman. It actually might be Swayman, who's the third string goalie. He plays for Boston. They're in Boston, so I'd go there. And then I'm also going to be looking to Sidney Crosby over 2.5 shots on goal. It's sitting on minus 115. He had 0 shots on goal tonight, like a borderline must-win game for Canada. Their captain has to come through.
Yep, absolutely. They are minus 385 on the money line. If you want to lay a goal and a half, it looks like a reasonable price at minus 144.
Yeah, I think I grabbed it earlier, right when we were talking about, right when that game ended, at Canada, minus 1.5 at minus 122. So a little bit of movement there.
All right, very good. Well, great doing the show with you here, my friend. You enjoy yourself on Sunday, cash a few tickets, and I know I'll see you down the road. What are you rooting for? What are you most excited about for your Sunday? Do you have any big game, big action you're looking forward to?
No big game. I'm making chili tomorrow, if anyone cares about that.
All right. Well, it's, minus 5,000. It'll be good. He's Tom. I'm Brady. Thanks to Tommy and AJ. Have a great Sunday, everybody, from all of us at SportsGrid.